Thank you, Madam President. I'm joined by my friend Rob Portman on the floor today, both of us longtime friends of now the late Congressman Lou Stokes. Both of us, we sat with each other at Congressman Stokes' funeral at Mount Olivet in Cleveland just a couple of weeks ago. We both called Lou a friend. I would like to speak about him, and then Senator Portman, I know, would like to speak about his friendship and his alliances and allegiances and work with Congressman Stokes. He grew up in a federal housing project in Cleveland. His father worked in a laundromat. His father passed away when Lou was 3, leaving his mother with 2 young sons to raise. A former sharecropper and descendant of slaves, she cleaned houses to support her sons and encouraged them to get an education. Lou shined shoes to earn money for the family. He served in the Army during World War II, probably pretty segregated Army, but he served. He went to college at Case Western at night on the GI Bill. From public housing to public education to public investment, in our service members, Congressman Stokes' life and accomplishments show us how government makes a difference in people's lives, something he passionately believed in, the partnership between government and communities, between the federal government and what we could do together as a country. The 20th century, our country made great strides in that public investment, expanding opportunity, paving the way for people like Congressman Stokes to become national and community leaders. What this country gave to Lou Stokes, he gave it back many times over. The seeds for his career of service were sowed in many places, in many fields, but particularly he used to say in the Army when he was stationed in the Deep South during days of segregation. He was appalled by the inequalities he witnessed, even for those wearing the uniform and serving our country. He said once, "I remember being moved from Jefferson Barracks in St. Louis to Camp Stewart, Georgia, going through Memphis. They stopped the train to eat lunch. The first dining room was all white soldiers. The next dining room was German POWs. A black curtain separated the black soldiers from the German POWs. It was one of the first times it really hit me," he said. He would go on to dedicate his life to fighting those inequalities. He and his brother Carl opened a law firm in Cleveland. Their first cases were civil rights cases. Congressman Stokes took on cases big and small, including the landmark stop and frisk Supreme Court case Terry versus Ohio. Again and again throughout his legal career, he fought for the interests of the powerless against the powerful, the same things he did in Congress. 1965, Lewis and Carl Stokes represented the local NAACP in challenging Ohio's congressional map. Around that time, Congressman Stokes' brother Carl was elected mayor of the city of Cleveland in his second attempt, understanding that Cleveland then became the largest city in America, which had elected a black mayor. The new district map created from the lawsuit I mentioned brought Ohio's first African-American majority district in 1968. Lou Stokes won that seat and became the first African-American to represent Ohio in Congress. In only his second term in the House, he became the first African-American in the nation's history to serve on the House Appropriations Committee. He didn't use this success to seek glory for himself. He used his commanding position to expand opportunities, not just in his own district in Cleveland, so important to those of us who live in Cleveland and those of us who represent Ohio, but he used his position to help African communities all over the country. He was immediately, and he earned it more and more, beloved in the black communities in every city in Ohio, from Mansfield, where I grew up, to Akron, to Columbus, to Cincinnati, to Dayton, to Toledo, and to smaller cities. He gave those who were too often ignored a voice in Washington where it could make the most difference. He secured funding for housing, for urban development, for healthcare, for jobs programs, for education, for colleges primarily serving people of color. He was a strong advocate for unions. He cared greatly about the trade union movement. He knew the trade union movement gave great opportunity to African Americans, especially in cities like Cleveland. He stood up for collective bargaining. He stood up for the rights of workers everywhere. And to give a permanent and powerful voice to people of color, he helped to form the Congressional Black Caucus. Congressman Stokes' accomplishments are many. We honor him today with our words and with this resolution that Senator Portman and I are introducing. We should strive to continue to honor him each day. And here's how we do it, Mr. President. Madam President, I'll close on this. On Sunday night, 2 days before the 2008 elections, Senator Obama, a colleague of mine at the time in the Senate, was campaigning in Cleveland for president 2 nights before the election. Ohio is, Senator Portman and I are reminded regularly, Ohio is perhaps the nation's #1 swing state. I know the presiding officer thinks they elect presidents in her state, but we really elect presidents in Senator Portman's in my state. Senator Obama came to Ohio Sunday night before the election. A rally estimated at between 70 and 80,000 people. As presidential candidates are, almost inevitably, invariably at the end of campaigns, he was about an hour late. Bruce Springsteen took the stage. A number of us spoke to the rally. Bruce Springsteen took the stage. Before Senator Obama arrived, I had the honor, and it became one of my greatest memories of public service. I stood kind of behind the grandstand, and had about a 45-minute to an hour conversation with Congressman Stokes, retired at that point, Congressman Stokes, Reverend Otis Moss, who delivered his eulogy a couple of weeks ago, and Mrs. Moss, Edwina Moss. And I just listened to them for 45 minutes talk about what it meant to them that we were this close to electing an African-American president. They frankly didn't think it would happen in their lifetimes. They weren't even sure, the polls notwithstanding, that was going to happen in 2008. And the excitement and the sense of history and the awe and the depth of feeling that Congressman Stokes and Edwina and Otis Moss exhibited during that 45 minutes, talking, reminiscing, talking about memories, thinking of the future, to my wife Connie and me, was just something I'll never forget. Since then, Citizen Stokes, former congressman, but Citizen Stokes, who cared so deeply about this, he was so happy that we passed the Affordable Care Act. He was so happy we did things like the auto rescue to get our state back get our state's economy back and going again. He cared so much about voting rights, and was so troubled by these Supreme Court decisions. And he's so hopeful that our country can get back on track in a bipartisan way to build this economy, to pass voting rights, to do all the things that he devoted his life to. First as a young lawyer, then as a congressman, and then as one of Ohio's most prominent citizens that continued to speak out on these issues that matter to all of us. We should honor his life and legacy by continuing Congressman Stokes' work for equality and justice in the lives of others. We honored him. We considered him a friend. I know that Senator Portman did too. I'm thrilled to be able to stand on the floor and speak for a few moments about my friend, the late Congressman Stokes.